Thank you so much for coming to Inside the Music, exploring the upcoming world premiere of Complications Ensue. With both of my Opera Philadelphia hat and my Athenaeum hat, I would like to give a particular welcome to anyone who is part of our Young Friends members of the Athenaeum who will be attending the Friday performance of Complications Ensue with Opera Philadelphia's Young Friends group, Vivace. We hope to build relationships between the two groups to strengthen our long-time partnerships together and expand audiences and enhance programmatic opportunities for both organizations. Thank you to our members of the Athenaeum who have graciously given their support to the annual fund above their membership dues, which enables the Athenaeum to offer outstanding programming like this today. Before we get started, my colleagues at Opera Philadelphia in guest services and marketing would like me to say that Friday and Saturday's performances of Complications Ensue are all but sold out. There are a couple tickets there, but we do have plenty of tickets, good seat tickets, for Wednesdays and Thursday. You can come and visit our offices, visit the website, but we will also have one of our colleagues in the back room at the end of the talk where you could buy your tickets today if you so would like. I have one more advertisement before I turn it over to Dr. Cass. Anybody who is here, who is part of the Opera Philadelphia family and is not yet an Athenaeum member, I would encourage you to do so. This is a wonderful organization filled with history, architecture, performing arts, engagement, and conversation in what I would think is one of the most beautiful places in Philadelphia. So if you have any questions about membership or interest in membership, please feel free to talk to the staff that is downstairs in the lounge, or as you go out the door, you'll see some pamphlets on your left-hand side, and they all mention membership for the Athenaeum. I've done all of my commercials, I've read all my notes, so now it is time to bring on Dr. Cass.
Thank you, Veronica, and thank you everyone for braving the cold to come out here. We were not sure if there would be anyone in the audience due to the weather, and this is an amazing turnout, so thank you. I hope that you all have stayed safe and warm in the weather this week and continue to do so before the snow melts. I'm excited to be back here in this beautiful room for the first Inside the Music of 2026 for our world premiere of Complications Ensue. This opera has a libretto by Michael R. Jackson and a score by 10 different composers, who I will name shortly. In today's talk, I will start by outlining the unusual way Complications Ensue was conceived and constructed. Next, I will introduce you to the opera's small but mighty principal cast of 5 and outline the various characters they take on throughout the opera. We'll then consider Complications Ensue as a prime example of Opera Philadelphia's opera but different ethos. And if you like that, there are some stickers in the back that say opera but different. We'll listen to musical examples from the opera and think about how they fit into the broader picture of the operatic repertoire, as well as how they connect to other musical and theatrical genres. At any point, if you have a burning question or you don't understand something, please stop me and let me know. I'll check now. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. And I will leave time at the end for questions and answers. There's sometimes a temptation to think of operas as masterpieces that transcend the practicalities of the real world, but there are a lot of logistics that go into writing and performing any opera. If you look at the origin story and performance history of basically any opera throughout opera history, you'll always find a combination of banal practicalities and inspired artistic vision. I love reading Mozart's letters complaining about the singers that he has and how he needs to make the music easier for them to perform. Complications Ensue is no exception. This unique project began when Anthony Roth Costanzo, Opera Philadelphia's general director, decided he wanted to commission a new opera to mark our 50th anniversary season. The problem was the company's 50th anniversary season was this season, 2025-2026, and Anthony was only hired in June of 2024. Most full-length operas slated to perform on major world stages take at least 4 years from the initial idea to its premiere, and many take much longer. A lot of this time is for the composer to write an hour and a half or more of music for voices and orchestra, setting the text of a libretto, and making sure everything fits the capabilities of the singers and the capacity of the opera house where it will be performed. And that's before all of the visual elements are created by the team of designers and directors. So we had a looming deadline of the 50th anniversary season and an art form that almost never comes together quickly. So our process needed to be extremely efficient if this was going to happen. Anthony remembered that a while back he had been starstruck receiving a call from Michael R. Jackson, whose musical A Strange Loop won a Pulitzer Prize for Drama in 2020 and a 2022 Tony Award. Jackson had told Anthony that he was interested in opera, and although he had written the words and music for A Strange Loop, he wanted to dip his toe into opera by focusing on just the libretto. Anthony also remembered that one of his good friends, Justin Vivian Bond, had also expressed a desire to participate in a staged opera as a performer. Bond had collaborated with Anthony on a cabaret show and recording, both called Only an Octave Apart, in 2021 and 2022, respectively. Now they were looking to star in an opera punnily titled Complications Ensue, in which a woman named Sue navigated the ups and downs of her long life. Now, with the need to put together an opera quickly, Anthony thought that maybe Michael R. Jackson could breathe life into Justin Vivian Bond's idea. All they needed was music. They would need a composer confident enough to write quickly and decisively, and established enough to ensure the opera's success. But composers for opera that met those criteria would already be working on long-term projects and probably wouldn't have enough room in their schedules to write a whole new full-length opera. So Anthony proposed a workaround to Jackson. Would he be comfortable writing a libretto and giving it in pieces to a group of composers, each of whom would write one scene? Jackson was game. He wrote a libretto in 10 scenes, one for each decade of Sue's life, and Anthony commissioned 10 composers. Because each composer needed to write less than 10 minutes of music, we were able to invite a wide variety of composers to contribute. Some, like Missy Mazzoli, Renee Orth, and Nico Muhly, were already favorites of Opera Philadelphia audiences. Some, like Kamala Sankaram and Dan Schlossberg, were well known in operatic circles in New York and beyond, but hadn't really done much in Philadelphia. And others were masters of a variety of genres and styles, some of whom had tried out opera, and others who had not yet had the opportunity. These composers were each given a brief summary of the overall arc of the opera, told the scene length that they should aim for, and then given the text to their assigned scene, written by Michael R. Jackson. They were only given the text to their assigned scene. In other words, each composer collaborated with the librettist, but not with their fellow composers on this project. This process harkened back to techniques of surrealist artists in the early 20th century who sought to create surprising pieces of art through unexpected juxtaposition. One of the ways they did this was through a game they called the Exquisite Corpse. Let's watch a bit of a video from the Museum of Modern Art in New York City that explains and illustrates this creative game.
The Surrealists believed in the power of juxtaposition, that two unlikely things would meet, and at that meeting point, there's this explosion. Exquisite Corpse was a drawing game played by a group of artists who belonged to the Surrealist movement. They would take turns contributing one section to a composition that corresponded to a body. I might start with the head, and then I would fold down that piece of the paper with only a teeny bit showing past the fold as a sort of prompt for the next participant to continue their own contribution blind to what had come before. They would fold that down, the next participant would join in, et cetera, until the end when they would unfold the results and see something that arose by chance. Each of those creases is this magical moment.
And if you're interested in learning more, the longer video is available on YouTube. So has anyone ever played this game? Just my colleagues at Opera Philadelphia. Wow, you're secret surrealists. Has anyone ever played it with writing? You can also play it with writing, right? You can write a sentence, fold down the piece of paper, pass it. The next person writes another sentence. If you get bored during my talk, you can do that. Or afterwards. I used to play that game when I was a kid. We definitely did not call it Exquisite Corpse, but it's the same basic idea. So before we hear the music that resulted from this kind of process with each composer writing their own music to a scene without hearing what was coming before or what was coming after, let's take a look at the plot of the opera, because that's what ties everything together. So we in the audience get to witness Sue in scene 1 as a baby. Death pushes a blanket-wrapped bundle in a pram as she welcomes Sue to the world. You'll have the pleasure of seeing 62-year-old Justin Vivian Bond embody a thumb-sucking, crying newborn in this scene. In scene 2, Sue is a child of about 10 who loves Christmas so much that she is the topic of conversation for Santa Claus and his wife, Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus uses Sue as an example of the holiday magic that her terribly disillusioned husband, Santa Claus, should continue to believe in. Scene 3 introduces us to Sue as a mysterious transfer student in college, envied by all. In scene 4, we get to step inside Sue's brain as a newscaster, Brenda Blackwoman, reports live from inside Sue's mind, commenting on how Sue seems to want to sabotage her blossoming relationship with her boyfriend, Roger. So there are interviews with Sue in that scene, and a combination of reports on world events and very interior events for Sue. We see the results of Sue's self-sabotage in scene 5 when Roger drunkenly calls 40-year-old Sue on a payphone, blaming her for the end of their relationship. Scene 6 is a spoof of modern life with a personalized internet algorithm embodied in a trio of singers trying to convince 50-year-old Sue to take part in the prevailing consumerist and technology-obsessed culture. Sue lounges in her backyard in scene 7, half listening as her next-door neighbor bares his soul to her. We get a chance to join Sue in reflecting on her life so far in scene 8, in which a memory of Sue as a child interacts with Sue at 70, unsure whether she's happy with where she's ended up. In scene 9, we find Sue in a motorized wheelchair in a nursing home as her fellow octogenarians try quite literally to outrun death. And finally, in scene 10, Death helps Sue blow out the candles on her birthday cake, inviting her to dance and to die. So in each scene, Sue is a different decade. So she starts at 0 and goes all the way up to age 99 at the end of the opera. In the course of this scene-by-scene plot summary I've just given you, I've mentioned a wide variety of characters, and I've listed some of them here. You might infer from this that the opera has a large cast. In fact, the principal cast is made up of Justin Vivian Bond as Sue, a quartet of singers, soprano, mezzo-soprano, and tenor and bass baritone, and then you will see other performers on stage, but they will neither sing nor speak. These are our 7 supernumeraries. Like extras on a movie or TV set, supernumeraries fill out scenes, adding visual interest, and in this case, moving around a lot of props and scenic elements on the stage. So I'm going to introduce you to our 5 principal cast members because you'll see them in a lot of different guises throughout the opera. This is Kira Duffy, and you may recognize her if you're a longtime Opera Philadelphia audience member from her star turns as Bess in Missy Mazzoli's Breaking the Waves in 2016 and Nellie Bly in Renee Orth's 2023 10 Days in a Madhouse. Mazzoli and Orth are 2 of the composers for Complications Ensue. They've written scenes 2 and 9, respectively, and I'm sure they were overjoyed to reunite with Kira Duffy. Duffy plays many roles throughout the opera, including a version of Death, Mrs. Claus, one of Sue's college classmates, part of Sue's algorithm, and Sue's child self. We can hear Duffy's gorgeous high notes and tonal accuracy in a little bit of an aria from Breaking the Waves. Stop it there, but it's a gorgeous aria. I highly recommend you listen to Breaking the Waves as well. On to our mezzo-soprano, Rihanna Thelwell. Most recently graced the stage of the Academy of Music last season as Angela in Missy Mazzoli's The Listeners, and before that as Yocasta in Stravinsky's Oedipus Rex. Her voice has an intensity and beauty throughout her really impressive range, and if you search enough on YouTube, you can find a clip of her singing a bass aria from the Verdi Requiem that I highly recommend. We can hear her voice demonstrated in a short section of an aria from Richard Wagner's Das Rheingold, known as Erda's Warning. Wagner would be very mad at me for stopping. He is well known for his unending melodies, so there's no good place to stop the clip. Rihanna Thelwell plays Death in scene 1 and then returns in a more comic role as the over-the-top newscaster Brenda Blackwoman who reports live from inside Sue's brain. She is also part of Sue's algorithm and then shuffles across the stage as an octogenarian in Sue's nursing home. We are very excited that Scottish tenor Nicky Spence is making his Opera Philadelphia debut with us in Complications Ensue, and I at least really hope he comes back in the future. His dramatic voice can pull out all the stops, but can also sweetly float almost impossible high notes. Let's listen to a small selection of Spence singing a scene from Beethoven's Fidelio to hear what his voice is capable of.
Spür ich nicht Linde, sein Säuseln in der Luft, und ist nicht mein Grab mir erhellet. Ich seh wie ein Engel im rosigen Duft, sie trösten zu Seite mir schellet. Ein Engel ihren Ohren, mehreren Begehrten zugleich, der führt bis zur Freiheit ins himmlische Reich. Und spür ich nicht Linde, sein Säuseln der Luft, ein Engel sich tröstend zur Seite mir stellet.
In Complications Ensue, Spence participates in the death quartets in the bookending scenes 1 and 10, and is part of Sue's algorithm in scene 6. He has an intense turn as Sue's next-door neighbor in scene 7, bearing his soul to her because he has no one else to talk to. And even, we'll talk about this more later, but even in that scene, which is a very, very powerful, heartfelt aria of kind of loneliness and despair, we have comic elements. Nikki Spence will be in a bathing suit splashing around in a kiddie pool in the backyard. Nicholas Newton's Leporello was a highlight of our Don Giovanni last season. Newton has a wonderful way of clearly articulating the meaning of the text he sings without sacrificing a gorgeous rounded tone. Here he is embodying Figaro in the Mozart aria Aprite un po' quegli occhi.
Solfeghe che cantano per farci penar, sirene che cantano per farci affogar, civette che allettano per trarci le piume, comete che brillano per toglierci lume. Son rose spinose, son volpi vezzose, son orse benigne, corone maligne, maestre inganni, amiche d'affari che fingono mentre lavori non senton pietà, non senton pietà, no, 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 il resto non dico, già ognuno lo sa.
So Nicholas Newton participates in the death quartets at the beginning and end of the opera. He is the downtrodden Santa Claus in scene 2, which we'll hear in a moment. He also plays the recurring role of Roger, Sue's estranged partner, before transforming into an inhabitant of Sue's nursing home in scene 9. As you could see and hear, all of these singers have formidable, flexible instruments, and they are also incredible actors. Their skill set serves them well in meeting the oversized demands of the score and libretto of Complications Ensue. But what about Sue herself? Bond is known for their artistry on cabaret stages, making audience laugh and cry through dialogue and singing. Here's a bit of them singing with our general director, Anthony Roth Costanzo, in their show Only an Octave Apart. You can hear the blend of Bond's voice, which they themselves have described as, quote, kind of woody and full of vibration, along with Anthony's more operatic voice.
You gave me, both in my life but also in my art, a kind of freedom that I didn't have access to before. That's a hard thing to learn. I mean, you know, how does one do that? And
especially when you don't do drugs. I had mushrooms for that. You didn't.
That's very
you
true.
have me.
A stick, a stone, it's the end of the road. It's the rest of a stump. It's a little alone. It's a sliver of glass. It is light. It is fun. It is night. It is death. It's a trap. It's a gun. The oak when it blooms.
A fox in the brush.
A knot in the wood.
The song of a thrush.
The wood of the wind.
A cliff, a fall.
A scratch, a lump.
It is nothing at all.
It's the wind blowing free. It's the end of the slope. It's a hunch. It's a void. It's a hunch. It's a hope.
And the riverbank talks
Of the waters of March. It's the end of all strain. It's the joy in your heart. A foot, the ground. The flesh and the bone.
the beat of the road. A slingshot stone.
A fish of flash.
We will hear this effect of a higher operatic voice combined with Bond's in scene 8 of Complications Ensue, which is the only time that Bond sings in the opera. They sing into a microphone center stage, similar to their cabaret persona, as they join in a duet with Keira Duffy singing the role of Child Sue. Other than that brief moment of singing, Bond embodies Sue through movement and spoken text. You will hear a couple of short monologues in this production, and some of the text Bond speaks will be improvised in every performance. So every performance will be different. And that's why I showed that little bit of dialogue before them singing there, because the transition between spoken dialogue and song is really important for Bond in their career. So I just mentioned movement, and there's a lot of movement in Complications Ensue. We are lucky enough to have two directors collaborating on this piece, Raja Feather Kelly, who choreographed The Listeners for us last season, and Zach Winokur, who directed our most recent production, The Seasons, and returns again to direct Black Clown in May. Both Winokur and Kelly trained as dancers and choreographers, and they have coached the singers in a variety of interesting choreography throughout the opera. Their direction has also helped the singers quickly change not only their costumes, but also their body language as they become different characters throughout the piece. We'll now jump into some musical examples that I think will reinforce the meaning of Opera Philadelphia's current philosophy, opera but different. Before we jump in, I want to mention that the only musical examples we currently have access to, because this is a world premiere, are from the January 16th iteration of the Guggenheim Works in Progress, which included a panel discussion moderated by Anthony Roth Costanzo with the librettist Michael R. Jackson, the two directors who I just showed you on the last slide, and conductor Karen Levine. The four singers we've just met sang excerpts from scenes 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 10. And I encourage you, if you'd like the videos on YouTube, you can see the whole Guggenheim Works in Progress. I will play you excerpts from some of these excerpts, but we don't have time to go through every single scene today. I'm happy to take questions about the scenes I have to skip in today's talk and the composers who wrote those scenes during the Q&A. I'm not skipping any scenes because they're worse than any other. I love them all, but I have chosen the following scenes because A, we have good recordings of them, and B, they show a variety of types of interactions between the singers that we've just met. So we'll start not with scene 1, but with scene 2. Scene 2 is by world-famous composer Missy Mazzoli, who we are proud to claim as a local here in Philadelphia. Again, she wrote Breaking the Waves that we just heard Kira Duffy sing an excerpt of, and that premiered at the Perlman Theater at the Kimmel Center in 2016. And our season opener last year, The Listeners, was our second co-commission of Mazzoli's. Mazzoli is an expert at building dramatic tension in music while still writing sweeping lyrical lines for her singers. In Complications Ensue, she was given an opportunity to write a comic scene for a grumpy old Santa Claus and his wife who tries to calm him down. So we'll listen to Kira Duffy and Nicholas Newton singing a bit of scene 2. And again, this is from the Guggenheim Works in Progress, so this does not look anything like our production will look like. Our production is full of costumes, full of props, full of scenic elements. And it's full of an orchestra. And we could not import any of those to New York for this Guggenheim Works in Progress. Our production also stars, as I said, Justin Vivian Bond, who did not participate on stage in this workshop performance. So you'll often see an empty chair standing in for the character of Sue. So visually, in general, this does not represent our production. Sonically, it does. And you'll also, the singers do some of the choreography that you'll see in the production. So you'll get to see some of that movement as well. Unfortunately, because this recording was taken just a couple of weeks ago, and we've been pretty busy rehearsing the opera, there are no subtitles on these videos. So here I've put the first few lines of the scene so you can kind of cue your ear into hearing the text, and I'm happy to repeat any portion of the text that you'd like afterwards. There will be super titles in our performances.
Christmas time. Somebody kill me. The weight of this time of year is overbearing. The weight of this time of year is like a barnacle on my back, heavier than 12 inches of falling snow. Christmas time, so many children all are waiting for their presents, waiting with so happy. So what? Half of that shit is from an Amazon warehouse. Half of that shit is made by children without the privilege of believing in me. I'm just a fantasy. I'm just a middleman, already forgotten and replaced by AI, earlier and earlier. Children grow up and their parents say I, their parents say I, their parents say I don't exist.
So it seems like you heard some of the words because you were laughing. And you probably noticed there's a lot of profanity in this opera libretto, so be prepared for lots of curse words. So I find this scene to be an interesting mixture of caustic and hopeful, profane and innocent, aggressive and sweet. And I love that there are all of those juxtapositions just within this scene, let alone the juxtapositions between this scene and the other scenes. There's a biting social commentary. Half of this stuff is made in an Amazon warehouse by children who don't have the privilege of believing in me, is one of the most powerful lines in this scene, I think. We're also hearing traditional text setting techniques in opera, such as word painting, so describing with music the text that is singing. We hear it with "it's heavier than 12 inches of fallen snow," heavier than 10 inches of falling snow, right? The snow is falling, the vocal line is falling. And we also have some physical comedy here as Nicholas Newton as Santa Claus is basically having a tantrum. As this is staged in our production, you have this happening at one side of the scene, and on the other side you'll see Sue as a 10-year-old putting a star on top of the Christmas tree, being all excited about Christmas. So we see this window into Sue's life as Mrs. Claus is saying, look at Sue. She is really happy. Christmas matters to her. Even if you're feeling like you're being replaced by AI and you're just a middleman, like you're saying, like, this is important to Sue. Let's keep on going. So that's scene 2. Scene 3 is by a relative newcomer to opera, Andy Akiho. Originally from South Carolina, Andy was a percussionist who became interested in the steel pan tradition and trained on the instrument in Trinidad for a while. He's currently nominated for 2 Grammy Awards, and I think the ceremony is coming up in a couple of weeks, so we wish him lots of luck. In this scene, we can listen to interesting driving rhythms. We can tell that the composer is a percussionist, I would argue, as 2 college students try to figure out, along with us in the audience, who is Sue. You will also get to see the 2 singers navigating not only the tricky rhythm and melodic material, but also synchronized choreography. There will be 3 chairs on stage. The middle one will be occupied by Sue by part of the scene. She is ignoring these 2 students, just gossiping about her right around her, and she goes on to ignore them even more, leaving them having a picnic. So that's what you'll see in our production. The opening words of this are just over and over and over again. Who is Sue?
comes from money.
I think she comes from California.
Who is
The words are a little hard to hear, but they're just gossiping, saying, I think she comes from money. I think she comes from California, and things like that. And later on, there's a refrain in this scene that's really catchy that goes, I hate her and I want to be her. I hate her and I want to be her. So they're really jealous of Sue, but don't really know why, because they don't know who she is. And we'll come back to this idea of the unknowability of Sue, which I think is a major theme in the opera. Scene 6 is one of my favorites because the so-called character singing the scene is a computer algorithm represented by a trio of singers. Cecile McLaurin-Salvant tackles the scene with a humorously robotic type of vocal writing that is so repetitive that it can't help but get stuck in your head. And I must admit, I've found myself on social media, clicking around on social media, hearing echoes of this operatic voice of the algorithm trio singing, "Click on it, you know you want to." And that's part of the text we will hear.
Click on it, you know you want to. It's been tailored to you soon. Click on it, you know you want to. It's been tailored to you soon.
and your specific female interests?
And your specific female tastes. We know you better than us. We are your algorithm.
And it goes on from there. So click on it, you know you want to. It's been tailored to you, Sue, and your specific female interests and your specific female tastes. And later in the scene, the supernumeraries come on with boxes from Amazon. It seems like the algorithm has worked. Sue has bought a lot of things, and they offer her these items one by one that she's bought, saying, oh, you have a problem with this? Oh, here you go, and solving all of her problems with consumerism. Although the scene is silly, I think the trio is also somewhat haunting and scary. And it's an effective social commentary about the pervasiveness of technology and the joint lack of privacy and community that can follow from too much addiction to technology. We'll skip ahead to scene 10. And this is the final scene in the opera. This is composed by Nico Muhly, who has written 2 operas commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera, and whose Dark Sisters we performed at the Perlman Theater in 2013. The quartet of singers returns as a joint embodiment of death as Sue blows out her candles on her 99th birthday cake. Death is inviting in this scene rather than menacing, gently urging Sue to take her leave of the world. So we'll hear the quartet of death singing, basically you've had a long run and now you can't keep on going. And then there's a refrain, come dance with death, that we'll hear at the very end of this clip, but it goes on for a while in this scene as a kind of hypnotic refrain.
The candles.
The candles on the cake. What an awesome and momentous occasion. We're honored to be here. We're honored to be good things and all good people must come to an
Come dance with death. Come dance with death into the golden horizon.
Come dance with death, come dance with death, come dance with death, come dance with death. Come dance with death, come dance with death into the golden horizon.
There's a lot more repetition of that scene. I think it kind of lulls us into a peaceful state after the frantic pace of the rest of the opera. I got goosebumps watching this scene in rehearsal. You heard the music, but anything can change in rehearsal, so this might not be what you end up seeing on stage, but at least as they had it last week in rehearsal, Justin Vivian Bond as Sue was spinning around and sometimes falling down on the ground and then getting back up and spinning around throughout the whole Come Dance with Death section. It was very, very, very poignant. I want to point out that the main themes in Complications Ensue are not unique to this opera. Complications joins such iconic operas as Der Rosenkavalier, the Mercopolis Case, in meditating on aging and the yearning towards immortality. We wish we didn't have to die. We wish we could keep on going on. It also brings to mind more recent operas such as Lembit Beecher's Sky on Swings and Paola Prestini's The Aging Magician that have showcased elderly characters with love and honesty. In addition, there has been a recent trend to showcase the pros and cons of technology on the opera stage, with Todd Macover's Death in the Power, Nico Muley's Two Boys, and Mason Bates's The Revolution of Steve Jobs as just a few examples. Technology is not a new topic to opera, however. In the 18th century, there was an opera about a hot air balloon, which you can see here. There's a picture of a hot air balloon in this 18th century libretto. And even Mozart's Così fan tutte showcases new scientific trends of mesmerism. Complications Ensue fits into the operatic repertoire in some ways, but it also embodies Opera Philadelphia's tagline, opera but different, by simultaneously fulfilling and subverting audience expectations. Recognizable features of opera are out in full force, but there are also many twists. Each singer has a solo aria, but the main character, Sue, barely sings. There are ensembles where different combinations of singers come together, but the characters these singers play in every scene changes. The opera is a creative combination of music and text, but the musical voice changes 10 times with these 10 different composers. Likewise, there are some repeated motifs in the text, the Christmas, technology, aging, loneliness, but no repeated motifs in the music, since by virtue of the opera's compositional process, no musical material could be recalled across scenes. The composers didn't collaborate with each other, and each scene is kind of in its own little musical bubble. So we're coming to the end of our talk, but do we know yet who Sue is? We get little bits and pieces of information about Sue as someone who death can't wait to meet again in the beginning of the opera, a Christmas-loving child, a mysterious college student, a confused girlfriend who ends up separated from her partner. She, like many of us, is targeted by her internet algorithm and struggles to be in community with people beyond the comfort of scrolling on her phone. She continues to age, sometimes having a hard time recognizing that she is still herself, until she dies, having lived a full life. In some ways, though, Sue remains unknown and unknowable, an enchanting enigma who we will continue to ponder after the opera ends. The same may be true for Complications Ensue. As we've seen, it's a work built around collaboration and a mixture of efficiency and excess. There are more than 100 props used in this production, including a blow-up flamingo, a bundle of sage, a pistol, a sex toy, and a birthday cake. There are over 12 named characters, but only 4 singers playing them. 7 supernumeraries who help move things around and add interest to scenes, coordinated by a 2-director team, which is not common in opera. There are also 2 costume designers, J.W. Anderson for the costumes of Justin Vivian Bond and Victoria Beck for the costumes for the rest of the cast. And of course, the 10 composers, 1 librettist, and the one and only Opera Philadelphia. You might think that this would result in pure chaos. There is indeed some chaos of, I think, the charming variety, but there is also surprising consistency. Our production's brilliant conductor, Karen Levine, when asked how the music flowed in the Guggenheim panel discussion, said, "I think it's kismet," which I totally believe in. It was meant to be that these 10 composers, without even knowing that they kind of linked together without even knowing, which I find quite amazing. It is exciting. The combination of different compositional voices is indeed exciting, as is the opportunity to hear an opera that mixes genres in its music and in its text. A question I often get asked when I give talks about opera, and especially about contemporary opera, is why are so few operas comedies? I don't have to answer that question today, because this opera is essentially a comedy. It does address some more serious topics, as we've seen, failed relationships, addiction to technology, the loneliness of aging. But overall, this opera is full of visual gags, surprising juxtapositions, and playful parodies. You will be one of the first audiences hearing this new piece, at once experimental and traditional, and I am so curious to hear what you think. We look forward to welcoming you to the Academy of Music next week for our performances. And at this time, I'm happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
What is the time frame this opera takes place?
The length that you will be sitting in the theater, or
No. It's 100 years of her life.
Yes.
But is there
Great
an
question.
actual time?
When was she born? I think it's supposed to be when Justin Vivian Bond was born, approximately. That's a really good question. I've never asked, and it doesn't say in the libretto. Do either of you know? I don't know.
You don't have to. I mean, it doesn't have to be.
It's a little bit ambiguous,
Yes.
and because I think there's things that happen early on in her 20s, maybe, or her 30s, that if we were to go back that many decades, that those things didn't exist. So it's a little bit of a...
Yeah, there's a lot of technology on stage with the props. So we'll see first like corded telephones on stage, and we'll see like old-fashioned video cameras for the Brenda Black woman scene. I think Brenda Black woman is named Brenda Black woman because it's supposed to be an era in which there's only like one Black woman reporter. And so there's some social commentary about like the 60s-ish, but then we got cell phones and the algorithm and technology. So it's kind of vaguely late 20th century into the 21st century, but no one has kind of pinned down the exact years.
It's fine, because subconsciously you start looking for anchors. We're like, oh, is there a reflection of a certain time in a certain scene or a certain music? But if it's free, I don't care. It's all good.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be somewhat open to interpretation. But great question. I hadn't thought to get that answer. I wonder if there is I wonder whether in Michael R. Jackson's mind there is an answer. I will try to ask him. Is there a place? It's America. Other than that, I'm not sure. Do you know, Claire? I thought you were taking the microphone to answer the question, just to give it to the next person. I think the scenes in her backyard were in kind of suburban America, where, she's lounging in a lounge chair. There's a fence. Her neighbor's next door with a kiddie pool. So yeah, there's a sense of just like America open to interpretation. There are some lyrics in Roger's aria where he asks details about Sue's life in this rambling phone message, and he says, are you still on the Upper East Side, or have you moved to Brooklyn? Are you in Boerum Hill? So there are some references to New York. If we're in New York and there are backyards like that, I'd say we are in Queens, where I'm from, or one of the outer boroughs, not Manhattan. But yeah, it's again open to interpretation. Great questions.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. As somebody who spent my career in process improvement, I think it's absolutely brilliant that you pieced it up and it came together, because that you just streamlined a 4-year process down into 1 year. Brilliant.
Thank you. So the comment was, as someone who spent their life in process improvement, this seems like we've made opera production more efficient, and maybe this could be a way that opera production could move forward sometimes, at least. We'll have to see whether it catches on, but this is the first time it's been done quite like this. I've seen some things like Atlanta Opera, I want to say, has, I forget what it's called, but like 24-hour operas or something, where there are short scenes with librettist composer teams, and they end up putting together a kind of showcase after a very accelerated writing process. But that's kind of a more works in progress sort of idea. And this, we're giving you a finished product, fully produced on the stage of the Academy of Music. So at this scale, I don't think anything like this has happened before. Yes.
Yeah, like what was the collaboration like? Was the libretto written and then just handed 10 chapters to 10 people, and there was no other collaboration between author and composer?
Great question. So what was the collaboration process like? Did Michael R. Jackson just write the libretto and hand it out in 10 pieces, or was there any back and forth? From my understanding, it was written, it was handed to composers. Composers were able to go back to Michael R. Jackson and say, oh, it's really hard to set this word. I really want a high note here. It's hard to set this word on a high note, and some other kind of tweaks, but not a very in-depth back and forth, lots of times collaboration process. And then there was a workshop of the opera where the composers finally got to hear singers singing the beginning drafts of their scores. And that was the time when the composers kind of heard one another's work, but it was already, close to finished. So there was no one who went in then at the end and said, oh, let's make this more consistent. Let's add in these throwbacks to these other scenes. As far as I can tell, no one did that. Although an audience for another talk was not convinced. They thought that the composers must have cheated because it sounded so cohesive, as our conductor said. I also want to say one of the reasons why the clips I played sounded cohesive is because we were hearing them all played on piano. Again, we'll hear it fully orchestrated in our performances, but I would be remiss if I didn't shout out our amazing pianist, Grant Loning, who he's been playing for all of our rehearsals until the orchestra comes in tonight, and is just an amazing kind of one-man orchestra. Yeah, he was playing the piano for all of the clips I showed you.
I'm curious about the back and forth between Jackson and the composers, because you said they were saying, I'd like to tweak this a little. Was there guidance on Jackson's end about, I want this to be subtle or monumental, or was it more of a just, here's the text is written, run with it?
That's a really great question. So the question was, are there indications in Jackson's libretto for how he would ideally like the music to sound? Or did the composers just take the, dialogue and set it however they'd like. I'm not 100% sure, and that's something that I'll try to ask the creative team before our performances so I can get a better answer. But if you look at the finished libretto, there are lots of like stage directions and things like that. I'm not sure whether those were in the first copies that he gave to the composers. I would guess that at least some of them were. And if that's so, that would add some consistency across the music if he were cueing the composers in certain ways. So that's a question worth answering. Thank you. I think there was one more question there.
Is it too late to have her not be in a nursing home? It just seems so depressing for someone who had the joy of putting a star on a Christmas tree.
Thank you. The question was, is it too late to change the opera to take out a scene in the nursing home because that's really depressing? I think it is too late. I will say that somehow the scene in the nursing home is one of the funniest scenes in the opera, if you can get past the initial aversion to the topic of or the setting of the scene. It's the mezzo soprano and the bass baritone with walkers, taking these tiny little shuffling steps and talking about outrunning death. I think I have a slide somewhere, but there's a snare drum that plays during the whole thing, so it's like this march. Da, 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 da. So it's like, and they're taking these teeny tiny little steps. So it's a lot of kind of physical comedy and musical comedy that adds levity to the depressing scenario. And Sue, throughout the opera, including in this penultimate scene in the nursing home, is very unbothered by everything. She's just like cruising around in her mechanical wheelchair, just like, who are these people, limping by me? And that kind of nonchalance, I think, also is part of what makes Sue as a character an enigma, but also what adds kind of like, we're not like feeling for her that she's stuck in a nursing home because she's not showing those emotions. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm leaving my email address here. If you want to ask me any more questions, feel free before you see the opera. And after the opera, I'm always happy to get your impressions. You will be the first audiences to see this. So it's good historical documentation, what you think. So please reach out if you want to, and I will see you at the opera.